Welcome to Shocking History Photos, where the past comes to life. Don't forget to subscribe for more unbelievable historical discoveries. Imagine waking up in a world with no internet, no fast food, and no modern conveniences. A world where every meal was cooked from scratch, every chore took hours, and entertainment was whatever you could create yourself. Life was tougher, but in many ways, simpler. Families were close and communities thrived. But what did daily life actually look like a century ago? From brutal workdays to unusual pastimes, let's take a step back in time and explore what life was really like 100 years ago. You might be shocked by what was considered normal. Let's dive in. Evenings were filled with quiet conversations instead of screens. Men wore suits at home, reading the newspaper. Mums knitted while planning tomorrow's meal. Kids sat quietly, actually listening to their parents. No distractions, no phones, no TV, just the ticking of the clock and genuine conversation. Laundry wasn't just a chore, it was a whole-day task. Without washing machines, women used a wooden tub, a rough washboard, and soap bars. Clothes were scrubbed by hand, back and forth against the board, until the dirt was gone. It was tiring work, and their hands became sore. They used to twist out the water and hang every cloth outside to dry. No quick cycles, no buttons to press, just hours of hard work for clean clothes. Cooking was a long and tiring process. Forget microwaves, gas stoves, or pre-packaged meals at that time. Meals were made from scratch, often using veggies from the backyard or ingredients traded with neighbors. Before cooking even started, someone had to chop firewood for the wood-burning stove. There were no shortcuts. Vegetables were hand-cut, dough was kneaded for fresh bread, and meat had to be carefully stored without a fridge. Meals took hours to prepare. Leftovers weren't tossed. They were preserved in jars or kept in a root cellar. It was hard work, but every meal was fresh, homemade, and made with love. If your family needed water, there were no taps inside the house. Back then, children didn't just play after school, they hauled water. They'd walk to the nearest well or pump, fill heavy metal buckets, and carry them home, without wasting a single drop. The amazing thing was that one bucket had to do everything: drinking, cooking, washing dishes, all from that same bucket. Letting water run? Not a chance. Every drop was earned, carried, and used carefully. You didn't waste what you worked so hard to get. Without video games or gadgets, kids made their own fun, running barefoot, skipping rope, and playing cops and robbers with sticks. Some got creative, turning old boxes and wheels into carts, pushing them down the street with all their might, and when they needed a break, they'd swing on a pipe, spinning faster and faster, laughing all the way. Their toys were simple, but their joy was real. The street was their playground, and every day brought a new adventure. Shopping in the 1920s, no big stores, no malls, just small stalls and carts. Vendors rolled in with fresh produce straight from farms and gardens. Every fruit and vegetable was hand-picked, full of color and flavor. The market was always crowded because people bought fresh items every day. At the time, there were no refrigerators to store food like we do now. Shoppers walked from stall to stall, talking with friendly vendors and choosing the ripest apples, crispest vegetables, and warmest bread. Every visit was a busy, everyday adventure in a simpler time. After exploring the daily hustle and bustle, let's step into the world of style. Discover how people dressed and carried themselves in a time when every outfit told a story. Men's fashion in the 1920s was all about looking sharp. Men never left the house without a suit, even for a casual walk. And a hat? That was a must. No exceptions. Shoes stayed polished, ties were always neat, and every outfit looked carefully put together. Walking down the street wasn't just getting from one place to another, it felt like a mini fashion show. Every man looked like he had just stepped out of a magazine. Women in the 1920s loved to dress up. Every outfit was chosen with care, whether for a special event or a simple walk in the park. Long dresses, fitted coats, and stylish gloves were everywhere. Looking put together wasn't just about fashion, it was a sign of self-respect. Even a casual stroll felt like a mini fashion show where every step was a chance to shine. Hair was a big deal in the 1920s. Women spent hours at the salon, curling, waving, or pinning their hair into stylish buns. Finger waves and soft curls were all the rage, making every woman look classy and elegant. It took time, but the effort was worth it. Stepping out of the salon with a fresh style made a woman feel confident and ready to take on the world. Now that we've covered fashion, let's talk transportation. How did people get around in the 1920s? Cars were rare in the 1920s. So many people traveled on bicycles. They rode to work, school, the market, or wherever else they needed to go. The roads were rough, not smooth like today, so biking took effort, but it was cheap, reliable, and didn't need fuel. Cars were rare in the 1920s, so most people used horse-drawn buggies. The clip-clop of hooves on cobblestone streets was a familiar sound. It wasn't fast, but it got the job done. A buggy ride took longer than a car, but it was a dependable way to travel before cars became common. The Ford Model T was the first car most people could afford. It wasn't fancy, but it was tough, simple, and life-changing. It made travel easier and faster. Not everyone had one, but those who did felt proud. Driving down a dusty road in a Model T felt like stepping into the future. It wasn't just a car, it was freedom on wheels. Trains were the way to travel back then. Steam engines sped people from city to city, making long trips easier and faster. Train stations were filled with families, dads in suits, moms in dresses, kids holding hands, all ready for adventure. The sound of the trains and the steam rising made every trip feel exciting. Can you imagine? No security lines, no Wi-Fi, just you, your suitcase, and the open rails. But those roaring trains weren't just for adventure, they were powered by the hard work of everyday people. Now, let's dive into the world of work and industry, where long hours and hard labor shaped the lives of many. Workers stood side by side in factories, assembling products on long conveyor belts. The machines moved quickly, and workers had to keep up, their hands moving fast to assemble each piece. It wasn't easy. Long hours, hard work, and little time to rest. These workers made the world go round by creating goods that people needed. The work was tiring, but each finished product symbolized their effort and skill. Farmers worked from sunup to sundown, muscles burning and hands blistered. No fancy tractors, just horses, sweat, and grit. Plowing took days, not hours, but every crop harvested was done with pride. It wasn't just a job, it was a bond with the land. Hard to imagine today's farmers with GPS and air-conditioned cabs, huh? Back then it was just man, beast, and the will to survive. Office jobs looked different back then, but just as hard. People worked on typewriters in dimly lit rooms and had to be fast and accurate. There were no computers to fix mistakes, so even a small error meant starting over. It wasn't exciting, but it was important work that kept businesses running and everything in order. Coal miners worked deep underground in dark tunnels, pulling coal from the earth. The air was thick and the work was dangerous. Their faces were covered in soot and their bodies ached, but they had no choice. It was their livelihood. No doubt mining wasn't an easy job, but it was necessary to work to run the system. The coal they pulled powered factories and trains. Railroad workers worked hard to lay tracks connecting cities and towns. They dug, hammered, and moved heavy steel rails. With every track they laid, they made it easier for people and goods to travel. The work was tough, but it was important because it brought people together in a couple of hours and days. Women used hand-sewing machines at home or in small workshops to make clothes. Every stitch was carefully placed. The work was repetitive, but each finished piece was unique, whether a shirt, dress, or coat. It wasn't just sewing, it was creating something people depended on. As work shaped daily life, education and intellectual movements began shaping society. Let's explore how knowledge grew during this time. In the 1920s, schools were much different. Children sat in wooden desks, with one teacher using a chalkboard and handwritten notes. Lessons focused on reading, writing, arithmetic, and sometimes science or history, all with pen and paper. Discipline was strict and rules were clear. Despite the challenges, school was a place to learn and prepare for the future. 100 years ago, university classrooms looked very different. Students sat in neat rows, listening closely to their professors. There were no projectors, LEDs, or recorded lectures. But every lecture was more than just a lesson. It was a chance to explore new ideas, challenge old beliefs, and dream of a better future. Education wasn't just about grades, but about shaping minds and opening doors to endless possibilities. Cafes were the heart of deep thinking. They were more than just coffee places. Writers and intellectuals sat together, passionately debating new ideas. It wasn't just casual chatter, but the birth of revolutionary thoughts that would change the world. The energy in the air was thick with inspiration. Learning shaped minds, but health shaped lives. Let's step into the world of medicine and science in the 1920s. Hospitals in the 1920s were not as advanced as today, but were improving. Patients lay in simple metal beds covered with white sheets. Nurses in crisp uniforms moved around, checking on them. There were no high-tech machines, just careful care and essential medicine. Doctors did their best with what they had, and hospitals were a place of hope for many. A century ago, medical advancements were shaping healthcare. Doctors used metal syringes, glass bottles, and sterilized surgical tools. With no modern scans, they relied on observation and careful exams. Despite limited technology, medical knowledge grew rapidly, with senior doctors teaching younger staff. These early breakthroughs laid the foundation for today's medical advances. A century ago, scientists worked with glass beakers, metal instruments, and handwritten notes. Without computers or digital tools, they relied on careful observation and experiments. Every discovery, big or small, advanced medicine, technology, and our understanding of the world. Now that medical science has come a long way, let's shift gears to something equally fascinating: entertainment. 100 years ago, going to the movies was a special treat. People watched silent films with no sound, just black and white images and live piano music. Viewers read captions and reacted with smiles, gasps, or applause. Theaters were packed, with people dressed up for a fun night out. Watching a silent film was more than just a movie. It was an unforgettable experience. The 1920s were the golden age of jazz. 100 years ago, jazz bands filled smoky nightclubs with lively music. The dimly lit rooms and hazy air set the stage for trumpets, saxophones, drums, and pianos, creating a sound that made everyone want to dance. People gathered to relax and enjoy the upbeat tunes, and the energy of the nightclub made the night feel truly special. Before TV and the internet, families gathered around the radio for entertainment. The crackling sound of voices and music filled the room, bringing the outside world into their homes. Whether it was a news broadcast, a comedy show, or a story, the whole family listened closely, sharing the experience and feeling connected. As the 1920s brought lively jazz to nightclubs, communication was a bit different. 100 years ago, without smartphones or social media, people stayed connected in their own unique ways. Sending letters was one of the most common ways to communicate over long distances. People wrote personal letters by hand, often taking days or even weeks to arrive at their destination. The post office was a crucial part of everyday life, connecting families and friends far apart. The telephone became more widespread in the 1920s, though it was still a new technology for many. People used rotary dial phones to make calls, and while they weren't as convenient as today's cell phones, they were a huge leap forward for communication. However, not everyone had a telephone at home, and most calls were made from public phone booths. For news and information, people relied on newspapers. They were essential for daily world events, politics, and entertainment updates. Everyone in the community would read the same stories, making the newspaper a key form of mass communication. The radio was the new, exciting way to listen to news, music, and stories. For the first time, families could hear live updates or entertainment from nationwide. While communication was changing, so was society. The 1920s brought waves of progress in women's rights and social change, shaping the world in ways we still feel today. In the 1920s, women were no longer willing to stay silent. They marched in the streets, holding signs, demanding the right to vote. These women, known as suffragettes, faced criticism, arrests, and even violence. But they didn't give up. Their voices grew louder, their determination stronger. It wasn't just about voting, it was about freedom, equality, and a future where women could make their own choices. Step by step, law by law, they changed history. It was a decade of bold steps and new beginnings where women proved they had the right to be heard and the power to shape the future. Life in the 1920s was full of hard work, change, and big ideas. The struggles and successes of that time shaped the world we know today. What lessons can we take from the past to build a better future? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and follow for more amazing stories from history.